It is a joy to be with you this morning. In 30 years as a Unitarian Universalist minister, never have I met a more engaging church circle than the Thursday Theology Group. You are a welcome font of vibrant curiosity. My message was awakened by you. We will draw together our shared gifts of universalism and transcendentalism, and I feel spunky, so here goes. And there's something we do need to name: the tension of our times, political and pandemic. We are overwhelmed. We have earned the right to have a vision of hope for ourselves and for our world. I'm offering you discernment that has been bubbling in me for years, conjuring a calling that tugs at me, that pulls me toward deep integrity and hope. I lean into it. Lean with me. We can heal the soul of Unitarian Universalism and help heal the soul of our country. My longing shares the voice of Buddhist activist Joanna Macy. With her, I am witnessing the great turning, our global culture and ethos awakening to an ecological civilization, the interdependent web of life, a feminist vision that parallels our UU principles. I have shared this hope with congregations I served as their interim minister, to grow relational capacities by centering in love, caring love, and creative love. Capacities nurtured by universalists and transcendentalists. This I offer you. For decades, I have been in conversation with those forebears. They speak to me. They want wisdom to come alive, relational wisdom. One of my favorite places to retreat with colleagues is in the Mountain Conference Center, Western North Carolina in the mountains. And one fall, at least 10 years ago, I went for a stroll up there and I met Reverend Charles Howe rehearsing poetry in a foreign language as he walked. Charles was a prominent Universalist minister of that time, and I stopped and asked, "Chuck, what are you reciting? Is that German?" "Hi, Roy. Yes, I'm keeping some of Goethe's poems alive in my heart. They inspire me." I wish I knew which poem, but that hardly matters. Chuck was dwelling in poetic presence, using stanzas of Goethe's imagery to awaken his heart to the here and now of life's flowing relations. You and me. That bluebird over there and the tree that calls to that bluebird so that it can rest there and pause and glance around. Chuck was feeling the afterglow of poetic presence with the natural world, reciting Goethe to notice each living moment and pausing to experience it. A quote from Goethe: "Every situation, nay, every moment, is of infinite worth, for it is the representative of a whole eternity." Nature is alive through things relating, each with each with all. Through Goethe, Charles Howe was reminding himself to remain present in each moment and awake to the world. I want to offer you a way to imagine our faith. I'm going to do it now. Have you looked at the front cover of our hymn book lately? Let us pause to look at our traditional symbol first. Familiar, isn't it? The interlocking circles, of Unitarianism and Universalism, enclosing the flaming chalice. Notice there is a feeling of sacred space by this image. Here is how Reverend Jim McKinley and I summarize our faith. Universalism, acceptance, inclusion, compassion, and love, all are worthy. Unitarianism, freedom, reason, and creativity affirm the potential for everyone to grow in wisdom and integrity. Jesus is one exemplar. These traditions frame a sacred space that is open and inviting, what I call a portal of possibility. And the flaming chalice, a beacon of hope, kindled by beloved community, awakening the spirit of life. A few minutes ago, I said the phrase, healing the soul of Unitarian Universalism. Did that give you pause? I love Unitarian Universalism. I love our shared journey and the wisdom of our forebears, but we are not living the fullness that can be Unitarian Universalism. Not the fullness of what is possible to center ourselves in love, grounded in Universalism's caring love and the creative love of our transcendentalist forebears. Our faith has become strategic, not spiritual, purposeful, not soulful. We have moved away from our sacred core. Consider Tagore's poem. Do we feel rocked in the ocean cradle, in ebb and in flow? Where is our center? The two traditions that enwrap our chalice, the mothering womb of faith and the beckoning flame, the birthing spirit, too seldom warm our hearth. This need not be. These virtues can stir in our midst. That is my longing. I yearn for us to face forward, leaning into the portal of possibility. I want us to nurture sacred space of beloved community, compassionate love and creative love, fueling our faith. Seldom do I witness quiet reverence, awakening the spirit. Where is our deep source, the holy? That reverence often feels absent. If we care and choose, our common ground can be mended. We are being tested. These turbulent times need us to help steer humanity through the great turning, centered in integrity, where Universalism and Unitarianism merge and flow together. How we choose to live progressive faith matters. This challenge has disturbed me to action. Here's my critique. Habits need to change. Too easily we drift into political action without the undergirding of love guiding us. I'm a political progressive, but even more, I am a religious progressive. I imagine Universalism as heart's caring presence. I imagine Transcendentalism symbolizing love's creative aliveness. I see Universalism as the soul of our faith, and Transcendentalism evoking the spirit of our faith. These virtues form what I would call the creative sailor captain who navigates us into the ocean of wholeness. Have you seen this before? can open our faith like this. We need to step beyond the walls, the tightness of any stances that block heart's faith. We need to move beyond standing fast on individual freedom of belief or no belief. Yes, that challenge is still stirring in our movement. I know that. Witness Reverend Bella's words last Sunday. That's our challenge, to be led with caring and creative love. I dearly recall what the progressive Christian scholar Robert Bella said in his 1998 General Assembly lecture. He was blunt and direct. He told us the mere affirmation of community, or even the interdependent web of existence, is not itself enough to offset a fundamentally individualistic position. That's hard to hear, but it is true. We can heal our relational, emotional lives and live from a receptive place of loving presence. We can keep our hearts open and breathing with the grace of God, or the Tao, or whatever you wish to call the wisdom beyond, from which all life depends. I draw sustenance from Psalm 46:10. Be still, and know that I am God. The wisdom of inner stillness, inner openness, pure, inviting emptiness. I'm pointing to the feeling center of who we are, to the cave of the heart. The heart breathes with grace, granted to us by quieting the mind and staying present. Here is the space through which may flow the gifts of universalism and transcendentalism. The creative emergence can awaken in our hearts and into our world. This is the devotional center of religious life. If we pause our planning and witness the deep stillness ready to serve us. Years ago, at the hospital bedside of one of my parishioners in Atlanta, Helen was dying of colon cancer. Helen was a well-known and loved woman. I want to take you back to that moment. Helen is hardly conscious. Her niece is here with us at this sad moment, and I invite her niece to be with me for a time of meditation and prayer. We each take a hand of Helen's. I started singing in hushed tones, Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Helen begins to join in, humming along. Helen's niece and I look at each other. We know Helen is now comforted here during her last hours, comforted by her faith. This moment echoes in my heart, a moment of openness and communion, an inviting openness with Helen present. Presence allows love just to be what is moving in our midst. No thought of the next moment, just the precious mystery of pure presence. This T.S. Eliot named the still point of the turning world. At the still point there, the dance is. Except for the point, the still point, there would be no dance. And there is only the dance. Here the openness beckons. Here is where Helen's niece and I and Helen were present. Ralph Waldo Emerson, a New England transcendentalist, spoke of this openness. He called it the transparent eyeball. He treasured it as a passageway to creative insight, which he championed to his companions, the creative community in Concord, Massachusetts in the 1830s. Let us move our attention now to that gift brought to our faith. That amazing community was gathered by Margaret Fuller, and they shared poetic imaginings, insights, and political stirrings, including women's suffrage. Creativity roiled and awakened a spirit of aliveness. Wisdom come alive. Those attending included Thoreau, the Alcotts, Elizabeth Peabody, and Theodore Parker. Margaret Fuller knew German. She translated Goethe in the group, to the group. She was brilliant and bold. Can you feel why? I am so pleased that the Thursday Theology group has awakened a keen interest in this background to our faith. I have been influenced by this through one of Margaret Fuller's kin, Richard Buckminster Fuller, her grandnephew. Some of you may know of him by the way of geodesic domes. I learned of him from architectural school. I was touched by his creative vision and his integrity. I tell you this because in considering this sermon, I became aware of 2 times in my life when he became my mentor and exemplar. Those 2 times were when his young daughter died and when my teenage grandson died. Grief pulses from these memories. His grief, my grief. What his story and mine have in common is the realization that grief can lead to integrity and a deep felt calling. Without us knowing of that hidden power stirring within us. His encounter with death came when he was 32. He was struggling with serious financial difficulties, and his 3-year-old daughter died of complications from polio. Fuller became depressed, and he turned to alcohol and began strolling the shore of Lake Michigan, pondering suicide. In his darkest moment, walking the lake shore, he decided to drown himself so his wife could cash in on the life insurance. In that moment of despair, a voice brought him an epiphany. Here's how he wrote of that moment. In committing suicide, I would never again have to feel the pain and mortification of my failures and errors. But the inventory of knowledge I had accrued would also be forever lost. An inventory that, if I did commit suicide, might prove to be of critical advantage to others, possibly all others, possibly to the universe. If I take oath never again to work for my own advantaging and work only for all others, I may be justified in not throwing my life away. Continues, he says, I seek to use myself in a lifelong experiment designed to discover what I could effectively do that could not be done by great nations or private enterprise, to improve physical protection and support of all human lives. He succeeded. In later years, he spoke of this moment when he devoted himself to livingry. He contrasted it with weaponry. In the early 1970s, I came under the spell of his influence, thinking as he did, to devote my life work to the needs of all people. Bucky's example lives in my soul as a guiding presence in my research work and my professional work developing congregational capacities follows from his witness, including my joy of creative small group experiments that help others, my devotion to living re. But my world stopped in December of 2011 when I got a call from my daughter. Dad, Taylor has been in a terrible car accident. You need to come to Oklahoma. Jean and I went to Oklahoma and there learned that Taylor died, 16 years old. We were with extended family for the funeral and then I had to return to Pennsylvania where I was serving as interim minister. I presented the Board of Trustees that my grief was too great. They gave me a bereavement leave to come back to Atlanta to consider my contract. After reflection and help from a colleague, I announced that I could not extend my contract. I needed to move home to Georgia and be with my wife, Jean, and grieve the loss of our older grandson. They understood. And when I returned home, I realized I needed to retire from full-time ministry. I could consult with congregations. My heart kept calling me. I need to devote myself to caring presence and to the soul life of ministry. I followed that decision. I've created small, soulful circles where we can be present with each other, compassionately listening, with empathy and through dialogue that seeks personal awareness and wisdom and integrity. That has become my retirement ministry. This is my calling. I design and facilitate small, caring circles that nurture emotional health and spiritual deepening. With Buckminster Fuller's resolve as my model, I navigate the inner ocean, creating and facilitating wisdom circles. These circles can benefit any society, any culture, anywhere. This is what I am designing, a model of living re. The gift of presence can awaken our faith.